First, let's get into the weeds of calorie counting. The main questions are these three. Number one, is calorie counting necessary to lose weight? Number two, is calorie counting helpful when losing weight? And number three, does restricting your calorie intake to a specific number actually help you lose weight? Okay. If that's the case, well, then what should that number be? And who came up with that number in the first place? And why does that actually make sense? Okay. In order to really understand calorie counting, we first have to take a step backwards and talk about another concept known as calorie balance. So take a look at the image you see on the screen here. You see a scale. On one side of the screen, you see food intake, otherwise known as energy intake. And on the right side of the screen, you see what's known as energy expenditure. Now, your energy expenditure, or your calories out, is the amount of calories that you expend on a daily basis. It's the amount of energy that it requires to operate your body and your mind and your heart and your lungs and your cardiovascular system and all tissues within a 24-hour period. The calories that are coming in on the left-hand side represents the amount of calories that you eat on a daily basis from external sources. Now, calories out has to be broken into 4 different components. The first component is what's called your BMR, or your basal metabolic rate. This refers to the total number of calories that it takes to operate your body at rest. If you were lying flat on your back on a table or in your bed for 24 hours, it would still require a certain amount of energy to operate your machine. Your brain has to be able to operate properly. So does your thyroid gland. Your blood has to be able to circulate. You have to be able to breathe. So your lungs have to be able to expand and contract. So over the course of a 24-hour period, the amount of baseline energy that's required in order to operate your machine is referred to as your BMR, or your basal metabolic rate. In addition to that, you have what's known as your TEF, your thermic effect of food. The thermic effect of food is basically the amount of heat that is produced to digest the food that you consume. You can think of it as the amount of energy that it takes to consume and metabolize the food that you choose to eat. That usually is approximated at about 10% of your total calorie intake. So if you're consuming about 2,000 calories per day, your thermic effect of food can be estimated to be approximately 200 of those calories, or 10% of that calorie intake. The third component is called NEAT. And NEAT refers to non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's a mouthful. Now, non-exercise activity thermogenesis refers to the amount of energy that it takes during all physical activities other than purposeful exercise. So when you go to the gym or you're going for a run, that's referred to as purposeful exercise. It's the amount of calories that you expend in order to engage in physical activity. But non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, refers to the amount of energy that it takes to do all of the other stuff in your lifestyle, like walking and standing and fidgeting and moving your hands and even typing. Okay, NEAT represents actually a substantial proportion of your total energy expenditure and has to be taken into account when trying to quantify accurately how much energy you expend. And the final component of energy expenditure is exercise. Again, intentional exercise, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. Every type of exercise has a very specific calorie requirement associated with it. The amount of energy that you expend when running is different than the amount of exercise that you expend when you are cross-country skiing, which is different than the amount of exercise that you expend when swimming. And it's also different based off of whether you're expending energy at a low intensity, a medium intensity, or a high intensity, or you're cycling between low, medium, and high. It can become a very complicated calculation, and that's why there's many activity trackers and devices that you can wear, which will get you a rough estimation of exactly how much it takes to perform any given type of exercise. So you can see on your screen right here that these 4 components add up to being 100% of the energy that you expend on a daily basis. The resting metabolic rate takes up more than 50% of all of that energy because, again, it takes a lot of energy just to run your baseline machine. The thermic effect of meals, or the thermic effect of food, again, represents approximately 10%. Then NEAT in this diagram takes up approximately 25%, and exercise usually takes up somewhere about 20 to 25%, depending on how active you are. So again, if we take a look at the previous diagram, we see that there's a balance between the total amount of energy that you're taking in versus the total amount of energy that you're expending. Your body weight is a representation of the balance between the two of them. The calories in on the left-hand side is the sum total of calories that you're eating on a daily basis, and the calories leaving your body is the calories out on the right-hand side. If the calories out are larger than the calories in, you're going to lose weight. In other words, if you're expending more energy on a daily basis than you are taking in, you're going to lose weight. You can think of it as a checking account. You have a checking account, and if you're spending more money or you're debiting your account more than you are putting into it, then the bank account balance goes down. Same principle here when it comes to your body weight. If you flip it around and you say the total calories out is less than the total calories in, then you're going to gain weight. If you're putting more money into your bank account than you are debiting out of it, then you can expect your bank account to grow over the course of time. The same principle applies when talking about your body weight. Okay. Now, the third situation is when your calories out equals your calories in. So if that's the case, then your body weight will remain stable because that's when you are considered to be in calorie balance. In the checking account analogy, if you are putting a certain amount of money into your account on a monthly basis and you are debiting the exact same amount out of your account, then you can expect your bank account to have a stable balance or an even balance, and that can persist over the course of time. Okay. So if you're trying to lose weight, it is very important to understand that the amount of calories that you expend must be greater than the calories that are coming in. You have to attain what's called negative calorie balance, NCB. And if and only if you achieve negative calorie balance, then that's the only way that you can actually lose weight and continue to lose weight over the course of time. Now, there's a lot of people who try and refute this principle. And I hate to break it to you, but it's just simple human bioenergetics and is a simple law of thermodynamics which cannot be broken. Okay? It's true. These principles apply to humans, and they apply to monkeys, and they apply to dogs and cats and caterpillars and rodents and all living organisms in general. It is just a fundamental law of bioenergetics. And this is something that, even though you may read people trying to refute these principles, they simply can't be broken. So the question is, how do you make sure that your calories out is greater than your calories in? Does that mean that you have to restrict your food intake? Does that mean that you have to eat less food? Do you have to count your calories? Okay. Do you have to consume less in order to create negative calorie balance? Now, the main problems with calorie counting and points systems are the following. Number one, they are very rigid. They're relatively inflexible, and they don't allow you to have any flexibility in your day-to-day operations. And that forces you to feel like you're confined and you're a machine and you're doing the same things on a daily basis. Number two, they often don't emphasize the importance of eating fiber-rich foods. And we're going to go a lot more into that because fiber-rich foods contain a component known as bulk, which is fiber plus water. Bulk has been demonstrated as the single most powerful component of your food to keep you full without adding calories. And that's very important. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. Okay. And finally, calorie counting isn't a sustainable approach to long-term weight loss because, yes, if you restrict your portion size and you count your points and you count your calories in the short term, you're going to lose weight. But if you fast forward 6 months into the future or a year into the future, trust me when I say it's going to be exhausting, you're not going to like it, and you're probably going to give it up. Okay. Now, what's even worse is that you might end up being exhausted and you might end up feeling fatigued most of the time when you restrict your calorie intake. Okay. And it can also create a mental block where you might begin to actually hate the food that you're eating. You might get stressed, or you constantly crave sweet foods, especially at the end of the day, because your brain is literally rebelling against this conservation mindset, and it's telling you that it's looking for more glucose as energy. Okay. I want you to understand one thing. Calorie counting is a short-term game, and we actually recommend it. And we only recommend it for people for these few reasons. Number one, it allows you to learn what is inside your food. If you don't know the calorie content of the food you're eating, which, most people have no idea how many calories are in the breakfast that they just ate this morning. They don't have no idea what's in the ham sandwich that's sitting on their desk right now. So calorie counting and tracking your calorie intake is just a game that you can play that allows you to learn what the calorie content is of the food that you choose to eat. Okay. Number two, I believe that we should have all learned how to calorie count when we were in elementary school. Not because we're trying to promote, dieting and calorie restriction, but because this information is something that can pay back dividends over the course of time. But the truth is that nobody teaches you how to calorie count when you're a young kid, as an adolescent, or as an adult. So you have to figure it out yourself. Okay. And calorie counting can actually be done very simply in today's world, because there's a lot of apps that you can find on the App Store, whether it's you have a Google Android phone or whether you have an iPhone. All you have to do is just go to the App Store and look up a term like calorie counting. We tend to teach people how to use an app called Chronometer, because we find that Chronometer is extremely helpful. It has a very good user interface, and it helps you learn the vocabulary of how much energy is in the food that you're eating. Chronometer is spelled Chronometer. And if you haven't been using it or you've never heard of it before, just go to the App Store, type that word in, download that app, and just start logging the food that you're eating. And you'll find in a short period of time that you actually start to learn a lot about the mathematical value of the food that you're eating. And when you do that, it allows you to take inventory of what you're actually eating. And if you're working with a friend or you're working with a coach, it'll help you and someone else hold you accountable to the overall nutrient quality of your diet, because you'll be able to visualize it and see exactly what you're putting into your body. And that, in combination with numerical data, gets you a really good picture of what is in your baseline diet. Okay. So short-term calorie counting, helpful, can learn a lot, but it's not a long-term solution. In the long term, we have a much better idea. This video was just a snippet of a much more in-depth discussion. Click on the link on the screen to check out the full-length episode. Now, the science behind health is overly complicated, unfortunately, but getting healthy doesn't have to be. Visit masteringdiabetes.org/start. Answer some questions about yourself and schedule a free consultation to talk with somebody on our team who's going to show you exactly how we've transformed the lives of thousands of people using the Mastering Diabetes method. We have a limited number of spots available, and that's why it's imperative to find a good fit. Again, visit masteringdiabetes.org/start to schedule a free zero commitment discovery call and start taking control of your health today.